The galactic concourse was a cathedral of glass and light, all floating arches and soft gravity wells humming beneath polished floors. Delegates from 37 species drifted into their seats, some gliding, some crawling, some walking on too many legs to look dignified. At the center platform stood Ambassador Kale of the Vulpine clade, tall, silver-furred, posture flawless. Kale's reputation was legendary, elegant, unreadable, impossible to rattle. The kind of diplomat who could smile while entire trade blocks collapsed behind them. What no one knew, what Kale had spent a lifetime ensuring no one ever knew, was that half of this reputation came from a small disk of illegal technology hidden beneath the ceremonial mantle. A stealth field projector. Not full invisibility, just enough to blur Kale's outline when the attention became too heavy. It took the edge off the crowd, softened the weight of 1,000 eyes. It was a social crutch disguised as advanced tech. Kale told themselves it was strategy. In truth, it was stage fright with better marketing. Today's session was supposed to be simple. Welcome the newest species to the Interstellar Council. Humans. The files described them as emotionally loud, biologically fragile, and culturally allergic to subtlety. Kale had skimmed the report and felt their ears twitch with unease. Loud emotions were difficult. Loud emotions pointed at you were worse. The concourse doors irised open with theatrical timing. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber as the human delegation entered. There was only one of them. One human. Late by the look of the council's collective tightening posture. The humans stumbled slightly on the unfamiliar gravity gradient, caught themselves on a rail, and gave an apologetic half-wave to a security drone that had drifted too close. Sorry, hi, wow, this place is very shiny, the human said, apparently unaware that 37 species were silently assessing their evolutionary worth. Kale felt the attention snap toward the platform like a spotlight suddenly turned up to painful intensity. The stealth field responded to Kale's rising stress, blurring their edges just enough to take the sting out of being seen. Normally, the system stabilized within seconds. Today it sputtered. Kale leaned closer to the translator mic, intending to deliver the practice greeting. Instead, the projector hiccuped. The shimmer flickered, then died with a faint, traitorous chirp. Kale's outline snapped into perfect clarity. Every reflective surface in the concourse seemed to bounce their image back at them. The sudden exposure made Kale's tail stiffen. Barely above a whisper, more to themselves than to anyone else, Kale muttered, "I stopped hiding." The translator, faithful to a fault, amplified it. The chamber went still. The human looked up, eyes widening in a way Kale had not anticipated. There was a beat of silence heavy enough to bend gravity. "Oh," the human said softly. "Wow. That's brave of you. I mean, first contact and you're already being vulnerable. That's really something." Kale froze. That was not the intended reaction. The intended reaction was no reaction. The intended reaction was polite indifference to a minor technical glitch. Instead, the human was looking at Kale like they just confessed to a deeply personal truth instead of admitting their anxiety tech had shorted out. "I know," Kale began, then stopped. Correcting the human would require explaining the device. Explaining the device would mean admitting to illegal tech. Admitting to illegal tech would mean disciplinary review, possibly worse. Kale felt heat creep beneath their fur. The human's gaze was earnest, unguarded, and disturbingly kind. The council chair cleared a throat that sounded like grinding stones. "Ambassador Kale, do you wish to clarify your statement?" Kale straightened, instincts for diplomacy kicking in. "The Vulpine clade values transparency," they said carefully. It was technically true, if one stretched the definition of transparency to include strategic blurring. "The arrival of humanity marks a significant moment. I merely expressed a personal reaction." The human nodded too vigorously. Yeah, I get that. New rooms, new people, suddenly you feel like everyone's looking at you. Been there. I once had to give a presentation in front of my entire department, and realized halfway through my zipper was down. You just gotta own it, you know? Like, okay, world, here I am. Several delegates emitted noises that translated loosely to confusion. Kale stared. Zipper? Kale's translator supplied an anatomical explanation that Kale immediately wished it hadn't. The human smiled, apparently unaware they had just introduced the concept of wardrobe malfunctions to a room full of species that reproduced by spore. That's very human of you, Kale managed. The human brightened, as if this were a compliment. Thanks. I think. Look, I'm Alex. I was told to be formal, but I'm bad at formal. If I mess up any customs, just, tell me. I stopped hiding years ago. Didn't work out great for me, but at least people know what they're getting. Kale felt their ears warm again. The phrase landed oddly close to the truth they hadn't meant to share. For a moment, the concourse felt less like a stage and more like a room where mistakes were allowed to breathe. The chair gestured for proceedings to continue. Protocols were recited. Welcomes were exchanged. Through it all, Alex kept glancing at Kale with a curious mix of respect and what Kale's translator insisted was admiration. It was deeply uncomfortable. It was also, in a way Kale couldn't quite categorize, relieving. As the formalities wound down, Alex leaned closer to the platform, lowering their voice. Hey, for what it's worth, thanks for being honest back there. First impressions matter and, yeah? It helps when someone else goes first. Kale considered, then chose their words with care. You misunderstand. I did not intend. Alex grinned. Yeah, but intentions are overrated. Outcomes are what people remember. The human smile was disarming in its lack of calculation. No posturing, no ceremonial polish, just a person standing in a room that could have swallowed them whole, choosing to be seen anyway. Kale realized, with a small internal jolt, that the device under their mantle had gone quiet. The urge to reach for its comforting blur was still there, a familiar itch. But for the first time in years, Kale didn't activate it. The concourse buzzed with low conversation as delegates dispersed. Rumors were already taking shape, Kale could sense it. The elegant Vulpine ambassador had confessed something to the human. The human had responded with an embarrassing story about zippers. Neither version captured the truth, which was somehow worse and better at the same time. Kale watched Alex wander off, nearly colliding with a floating dignitary and apologizing to it like one apologized to furniture. Kale let out a slow breath. The galaxy's newest species was loud, clumsy, and dangerously sincere. It was going to be a long assignment. It might also, Kale suspected, be the first time in a very long while that hiding felt like a choice instead of a necessity. By the time the human finished wandering the concourse, the story had already mutated into something far more interesting than the truth. On the upper levels, a cluster of amphibious traders whispered that the Vulpine ambassador had confessed a forbidden attachment to the human. On the lower tiers, a pair of crystalline archivists recorded the moment as the first instance of cross-species emotional unmasking. Somewhere in between, a rumor took hold that Kale's fur had changed color in embarrassment, which was biologically impossible but narratively satisfying, so no one questioned it. Kale retreated to a quieter corridor meant for dignitaries who needed to pretend they weren't hiding. The irony was not lost on them. Their stealth field projector was still warm against their side, a reminder of the habit they'd relied on for years. It would be easy to switch it back on, blur into comfortable anonymity, let the moment dissolve into protocol and forgetfulness. Instead, Kale found themselves waiting. Waiting was a dangerous habit. It gave thoughts room to grow. Alex found them anyway, guided by a hovering translator drone that beeped whenever Alex strayed into a restricted wing. Wow, this place is like a maze designed by someone who hates maps, Alex said, slowing to avoid stepping on a decorative bioluminescent vine. I think I just apologized to a wall that turned out to be a senator. Kale's tail flicked despite themselves. The walls here have strong opinions. Alex laughed, then hesitated, shifting their weight. So, about earlier. If I crossed a line, let me know. I have this thing where I hear something emotional and my mouth decides it's time to go on a motivational speaking tour. You did not cross a line, Kale said. You merely stepped on it with enthusiasm. Alex winced. Yeah, that tracks. They walked in awkward parallel for a moment. The corridor's lights dimmed and brightened in a slow, calming rhythm meant to soothe species prone to panic. Kale was painfully aware of their own reflection in the polished wall panels. No blur. No softening. Just them. I should clarify, Kale said. What I said in the concourse was not a confession in the sense you interpreted. Alex's face went through 3 expressions in quick succession: surprise, disappointment, and relief that tried to hide behind humor. Oh. Right. Cool. I mean, not cool, but cool as in, understood. Totally normal misunderstanding. Happens to me a lot. I once thanked someone for their condolences when they were congratulating me. Very different vibes. Kale allowed a small, genuine smile. The phrase carried multiple meanings. To you, emotional. To me, technical. Ah, Alex said. So when you said you stopped hiding, you meant your, cloaky thing broke? Precisely. Alex nodded slowly. That's less dramatic, but still kind of relatable. My phone screen shattered this morning and I said my life is falling apart, which was also not technically accurate, but it felt true in the moment. Kale studied the human. There was a strange comfort in how easily Alex folded trivial inconveniences into emotional language. It was inefficient. It was also honest in a way Kale wasn't used to seeing in diplomacy. The corridor opened into a small observation lounge overlooking the docking bays. Ships of every configuration slid in and out, elegant curves beside blocky human designs that looked like they'd been assembled with optimism and a limited budget. Alex pressed their hands to the transparent barrier. You know, everyone told me not to be myself in here. To be polished. Strategic. Not too honest. But if I try that, I end up sounding like a broken brochure. Kale snorted before they could stop themselves. The sound startled them both. Alex's eyes lit up. Was that a laugh? Did I unlock a rare diplomatic reaction? Do not become arrogant, Kale said, though the warmth in their chests betrayed the admonishment. Your species has a talent for saying the wrong thing with perfect timing. Finally, a skill I can put on my resume. A group of delegates passed the lounge, casting curious glances through the glass. Kale felt the familiar itch to blur, to soften their presence. Instead, they stood where they were. The looks didn't burn as much as they used to. They were just looks. Some curious. Some amused. Some scandal-hungry. None fatal. One of the delegates, a tall insectoid with too many eyes to count politely, paused. Ambassador Kale. It clicked. The Council is intrigued by your apparent openness today. Kale inclined their head. The Council is free to be intrigued. It will survive. The insectoid's eyes shifted to Alex. Is this the human who provoked your openness? Alex raised a hand. Hi. I provoke a lot of things unintentionally. Mostly eye rolls. The insectoid made a sound that might have been laughter if one stretched the definition. Fascinating. Humans appear to destabilize social equilibrium through casual sincerity. Yeah, Alex said. We're like emotional toddlers with space travel. After the insectoid moved on, Alex exhaled. Okay, I'm starting to see why you might want to blur yourself a bit in crowds like this. Everyone stares like they're waiting for you to become a headline. Kale considered the human's words. It is easier to manage expectations when one is indistinct. Sure, Alex said. But then nobody actually sees you. They just see what they want you to be. Elegant fox diplomat. Mystery in fur form. Kale's ears twitched. You simplify us. Yeah, sorry. It's a human flaw. We compress things until they fit in our heads. People, planets, feelings. Sometimes we forget the full version exists. The honesty of it landed harder than flattery would have. Kale looked back out at the docking bay, at the messy, functional human ships among the polished alien fleets. Humanity didn't look impressive by galactic standards. They looked stubborn. Like they kept showing up to places they weren't built for and making it everyone else's problem. A chime echoed through the station, announcing an impromptu council session. Kale's comm unit pulsed with a request to return. The rumors had escalated into questions. Questions into curiosity. Curiosity into potential complications. I should go, Kale said. Alex grimaced. Yeah. I should probably go apologize to another wall or something. Good luck with the intrigue. Kale hesitated, then reached up and removed the small disc from beneath their mantle. The stealth field projector felt lighter than it should have in their palm. They turned it off fully. No safety shimmer. No comforting blur. Just choice. For what it is worth, Kale said, your misunderstanding was disruptive. The Council does not enjoy disruptions. Alex perked up. Oh, I'm great at those. And yet, Kale continued, disruptions can reveal truths that protocol keeps hidden. You reminded me that hiding can become habit, even when the danger has passed. Alex softened, the humor easing into something gentler. Yeah. Habits stick around longer than the reasons for them. I still duck when I hear loud noises, even though I haven't lived near fireworks in years. Kale inclined their head in acknowledgement. Then perhaps we are both recovering from environments that taught us to brace. They parted with an awkward nod that carried more understanding than any formal bow. As Kale turned toward the council chamber, they felt the weight of attention gathering again. This time, they did not reach for the blur. The council chamber was louder than before, not in volume but in tension. Delegates leaned toward one another, whispering through translators that struggled to keep up with the speed of gossip. By the time Kale stepped onto the central platform, the narrative had solidified into something dramatic enough to be almost flattering. The Vulpine ambassador had chosen to reveal vulnerability to a human. Some framed it as bravery, others as recklessness. A few called it a calculated move to manipulate galactic sentiment. No one asked Kale what had actually happened. The chair's voice cut through the noise. Ambassador Kale, reports indicate you employed unauthorized stealth technology during official proceedings. Is this accurate? Kale did not bother to soften the truth. Yes. A ripple of reaction moved through the chamber. Shock from species who believed in ritual purity. Satisfaction from those who enjoyed watching polished reputations crack. The chair tilted its head. Such devices are prohibited. Their use undermines the Council's foundational principle of transparent presence. Alex, seated at the far edge of the chamber, shifted uncomfortably. Humans were not yet allowed a central position. Too new. Too unpredictable. Alex raised a hand anyway, then seemed to remember where they were and lowered it halfway, leaving it hovering in social limbo. Kale noticed. The sight was oddly grounding. The device was not used to deceive, Kale said. It was used to manage personal distress. The violation is mine. The intention was not manipulation. A murmuring delegate clicked its mandibles. Intentions are irrelevant. Outcomes shape trust. Alex muttered, too loudly for someone in a chamber full of advanced acoustics. That feels like a motto for people who hate apologies. Several heads turned. The chair fixed Alex with a look that suggested curiosity wrapped in mild alarm. Human representative, do you have standing to comment? Alex blinked. Do I? I mean, I have legs. That's standing. Sorry. Jokes. Bad timing. I feel like this got bigger than it needed to. Kale felt a strange, unwelcome swell of gratitude. The human had no diplomatic immunity to hide behind. They were inserting themselves into a situation that could easily brand their entire species as troublesome on day one. Typical human problem-solving: see a fire, step into the smoke to point at it. The chair gestured. Speak, then. Briefly. Alex took a breath. Look, I'm new here. So take this as outside perspective. Back home, we've got rules about transparency too. We also have rules about not judging people for coping badly when they're under pressure. Sometimes those rules fight each other. When that happens, we usually ask why the pressure exists in the first place. The chamber stilled. The idea of questioning the structure instead of punishing the symptom was not a common diplomatic reflex. A crystalline delegate chimed. Are you suggesting the council's environment is distress-inducing? Alex shrugged. I mean, yeah. No offense. This place is beautiful, but it feels like standing on a stage where everyone expects you to be perfect forever. That would mess with anyone's head. I can barely order coffee without apologizing to the cup. There was a pause as translators struggled to convey the emotional logic of apologizing to inanimate objects. Kale watched reactions ripple outward. Confusion. Offense. Thoughtfulness, in some cases. The council had never considered that their standards of composure might be less neutral than they believed. The chair tapped its staff against the floor. The law remains. Unauthorized stealth devices are forbidden. I'm not arguing that, Alex said. Rules are rules. I break them sometimes too, and then I get parking tickets. I'm just saying, maybe don't turn this into a morality play about honesty versus deceit. Sometimes it's just about someone trying not to panic in public. Kale felt the words land in the room like a dropped instrument, awkward but resonant. The chair regarded Kale again. Ambassador, will you submit the device for review and accept censure? Yes, Kale said. There was relief in not pretending otherwise. And I will not use it again in council chambers. A low murmur of approval followed. Not unanimous, but enough to ease the immediate threat of formal reprimand. The council loved admissions of fault when they were clean and ceremonial. Kale's honesty fit the shape they could accept. The chair inclined its head. Then this matter will be recorded and closed. As the tension bled out of the chamber, Alex let out a breath they'd clearly been holding. They met Kale's gaze across the room and gave a small, crooked thumbs up. The gesture was strange in this context, but the intent was unmistakable. After the session dissolved into smaller clusters of conversation, Kale approached Alex. You inserted yourself into a conflict that did not concern your species. Alex winced. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's a reflex. Someone looks cornered, I tend to jump in. Not always helpful. Once tried to mediate an argument between two cats. Lost a lot of blood. Kale's ears angled in bewilderment. Why would you involve yourself in the dispute of predators with claws? Because one of them was my roommate, Alex said. Long story. They walked toward the quieter edge of the chamber. The aftermath of the confrontation lingered in the air like static. Kale felt oddly lighter. The device that had once been a shield now sat in a sealed container with a council seal. The loss of it felt less like vulnerability, and more like setting down a heavy coat you'd forgotten you were wearing. I did not require your intervention, Kale said, because it was the kind of thing one said when they absolutely had. Alex smiled, unapologetic. Yeah, but you didn't deserve to be turned into a cautionary tale either. First day on the job for my species and we're already good at sticking our noses where they don't belong. Feels on brand. Kale studied the human. Your honesty disrupts carefully maintained equilibrium. Yeah, Alex said. We're kind of allergic to fake calm. It makes us itch. So we poke it. Sometimes the calm was fake. Sometimes it was just someone trying really hard. Hard to tell from the outside. Kale considered the years they had spent blurring themselves into palatable shapes for others' comfort. The council valued composure, but composure had slowly turned into performance. The difference was subtle until it wasn't. You endangered your standing here, Kale said. Alex shrugged. Standing is overrated. I trip over my own feet when I stand too confidently. There was a beat of silence, then Kale laughed. Not the restrained diplomatic chuckle, but an unguarded sound that startled a nearby delegate. The release of it felt like a muscle finally allowed to stretch. The galaxy had not collapsed because a Vulpine ambassador admitted to coping poorly. The council had not imploded because a human questioned the environment that produced the coping. The crisis, such as it was, had resolved into something smaller and more honest, a rule enforced, a habit exposed, a choice made. Kale looked at Alex. Your species is inconvenient. Alex grinned. We prefer disruptively sincere. Sounds nicer on brochures. As they parted, Kale realized the real disruption hadn't been the broken stealth field or the whispered phrase that started the rumors. It had been the human refusal to treat composure as the same thing as strength. The station settled back into its usual rhythm, but the quiet felt different now, as if a note had been struck that kept vibrating through the corridors. Kale moved through the concourse without the familiar soft blur around their form. Delegates noticed. Some stared with open curiosity. Others nodded with the stiff approval reserved for someone who had publicly taken their medicine. A few smiled, the kind of small, private smiles that suggested relief rather than judgment. The galaxy did not end when a symbol of composure showed a crack. It adjusted. Alex had become, accidentally and spectacularly, a topic of study. Not because of any strategic brilliance, but because humans kept doing things the galaxy had rules against doing. They admitted fault without being cornered. They spoke plainly in rooms built for careful phrasing. They treated rank as a convenience rather than a shield. It unsettled people. It also made conversations move faster. The Council had scheduled 3 separate briefings titled Variability in Human Communication Norms, which was a polite way of saying, we don't know what to do with these people, but they're doing something to us. Kale found Alex in the observation lounge again, staring at ships with the same mix of wonder and mild disbelief. I heard I'm now officially classified as a destabilizing variable, Alex said without looking away. Feels like a promotion. You have altered several committees' agendas, Kale replied. This is considered disruptive. Alex smiled. You keep using that word like it's bad. Back home, disruption is how we fix stuff that's broken but comfortable. Kale leaned against the transparent barrier. Comfort can be persuasive. It convinces you to tolerate what you would otherwise change. Alex nodded. Yeah. Humans are great at tolerating nonsense until someone trips over it and spills coffee on the nonsense. Then suddenly it's a problem worth solving. A pause settled between them, companionable and unforced. Kale noticed the urge to reach for the vanished device had faded. The absence felt normal now. Exposure had stopped being a threat and started being a condition of presence. I spoke with the chair, Kale said. They are considering adjustments to how first contact protocols account for emotional load. Your commentary was recorded. Alex blinked. Wait, seriously? I was just rambling. Rambling can be data, Kale said. Especially when it is consistent across your species. Alex laughed. We'll put that on the flag. Humanity, consistently rambling. They watched a human cargo ship dock with a clumsy grace that made nearby engineers flinch. It scraped the guide rails, corrected, then scraped again, like it was apologizing with its hull. The pilot emerged moments later and gestured animatedly at the dents, clearly explaining why this was not their fault, actually, if you thought about it. Kale's tail flicked with something like fondness. Your technology appears inelegant. Alex shrugged. Yeah, but it works. Most of the time. And when it doesn't, we fix it with duct tape and optimism. Those are not recognized engineering principles. They are where we're from. Kale turned to face Alex. Earlier, when I said I had stopped hiding, you misunderstood. You interpreted vulnerability where there was malfunction. Alex winced slightly. Yeah. My bad. Humans project. A lot. And yet, Kale continued, your misunderstanding forced me to confront the habit beneath the malfunction. The device failed, but the impulse to use it had existed for years. Your reaction made the habit visible. Alex considered that. So, my emotional overreach accidentally did something useful? Yes, Kale said. Do not become complacent about this. Alex grinned. No promises. A group of junior delegates passed by, whispering about the human who had spoken back to the council chair and lived to tell the tale. Alex caught a fragment of the translation and flushed. Okay, that part is weird. I didn't mean to become a thing. Influence is often accidental, Kale said. The galaxy is full of people who changed it without intending to. They stood in silence again. Kale felt the weight of the last cycle settling into something manageable. The loss of the device had not exposed them to catastrophe. It had exposed them to attention, which was not the same thing. Attention could be navigated. It could even be shaped. Kale leaned slightly closer to Alex and spoke softly, not to be amplified, not to be recorded. I stopped hiding. Alex tilted their head. Okay, now I have to ask. This time, do you mean emotionally, or is some other piece of tech about to explode? Kale's mouth curved into a genuine smile. Emotionally. Alex let out a relieved laugh. Good. Because if more tech is about to explode, I need to stand farther away. I have a bad track record with shrapnel. The humor eased the weight of the moment, but the truth of it stayed. Kale felt the words settle into them, not as a dramatic confession, but as a simple statement of intent. They would still feel the urge to blur when rooms grew heavy with expectation. They would still want to soften themselves into something easier to consume. But now the habit had a name. Now the choice was conscious. The Council would continue to value composure. The galaxy would continue to build stages and expect performances. Humanity would continue to walk onto those stages and trip over the props, then apologize to them. The clash of those approaches was not destructive. It was clarifying. It revealed which parts of tradition were structure, and which were just comfort pretending to be necessity. Kale straightened, feeling the familiar posture of the diplomat settle over them without the old tension underneath. Your species will be challenging to integrate. Alex's eyes brightened. We get that a lot. And yet, Kale added, your presence has already altered how the Council perceives strength. Composure is no longer the only acceptable shape of it. Alex shrugged, then offered a crooked, earnest smile. Strength comes in a lot of embarrassing forms. Humans are kind of proof of that. They parted with the easy understanding of two people who had stumbled into a shared lesson from opposite directions. The phrase that had started as a technical admission and turned into a misunderstanding now felt accurate in the way that mattered. Kale had stopped hiding. Not because the galaxy demanded it, and not because a device had failed, but because someone inconveniently honest had treated exposure like something survivable.